Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Indriyasyan, this is Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text 34. That's 334. Indriyasyendriyasyarte Ragadvesha vyavastitao Tayorna vasham agachet Tauyasya paripantino. Indriyasya, of the senses. Indriyasya arte, in the sense objects. Raga, attachment. Dveshao, also detachment. Vyavastitao, put under regulations. Tayo, of them. Na, never. Vasham, control. Agachet, one should come. Tau, those. He, certainly. Asya, his. Paripantinao, stumbling blocks. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Please repeat if you wish. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. But one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed. Otherwise, they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet, we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations, unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always the chance of an accident, even on the royal roads. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger, even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness, or acting always in loving service of Krishna, detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. Om Gyantimarandasya Jananjana Shalakya Chakshumilitamyana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Bhagaramayam Dadati Svavarantigam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So, yes, attachment and aversion. We have been here crores of lifetimes. It's 20 million births or more, Prabhupada says, in this material world. So we're conditioned to accept what is favorable for our pleasure and reject what is unfavorable. Now, that's fine in the purest sense, but let's just use to say that which is pleasurable for our sense gratification and that which is unpleasurable we avoid. So this is the conditioning that we have been under for a long time due to envy in the heart of trying to play Krishna's role, trying to be the independent enjoyer and the Lord of all that I survey. So, from doing this, one then spends quite some time, and if we look at the animals, that's all they're doing. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, except they'll just, I think it's worth the risk if I steal this glubjamin from that devotee, the monkey's thinking, and he risks that under certain, but if it's a big stick there, he goes, that's probably not worth it. So if you look at human life, it's without Krishna consciousness. If you go to the Western world, it is simply, okay, we've already done the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and the animal species, we're bored with that. Now let's try to find more elaborate ways to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. It's basically just that. In some extremely elaborate way or another, and you spend a lot of money for such things. But those with some wisdom, those that have an education, Prabhupada said, is that which teaches us how to break free of the cycle of birth and death. The education is not understanding the material elements and how to manipulate them for sense gratification. This is the modern educational system that really is not an educational system. It is like a bunch of monkeys that have developed a little more intelligence than the monkeys, but are still just doing the animal propensities. So those that have an education from reading Bhagavad-Gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada, we get an understanding that the goal is not to manipulate these material elements around to lord it over more, but to get out of this false conception of the self as being the Lord, which means being free from the material tabernacle once and for all, and living our eternally natural, blissful life in the kingdom of God. serving Krishna, returning to our constitutional position. Lord Rishabhadev tells his sons, one should perform austerities and penance to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activities, when heart is purified, when one has attained such a position, one attains his eternal blissful life, free from, attains his blissful, eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to the material happiness, and which lasts forever. So obviously this is better. So we're not discouraging the program of finding your ultimate pleasure and avoid displeasure, but gaining an understanding as to how to do that. So in our neophyte stages, we are coming from this conditioning to go for immediate sense gratification. I can remember as a kid, my mother, if it was up to me, I wouldn't eat any vegetables, I wouldn't brush my teeth, I wouldn't go to school, I would only eat cake, ice cream, these kind of things. But because there was an authority around to guide me, my mother demanded that I wouldn't give me the cake until I ate the vegetables, and would force me to go to school, and on and on and on. So in this way, and I learned, I got 5 cavities once. I didn't brush my teeth for like a year, and I got 5 cavities, and I thought, if I get 5 cavities when I'm 30, I won't have any teeth left, so I better start brushing my teeth. So we can learn the hard way. Well, some people don't even learn the hard way, but it's more intelligent to gain a real education. If I think of something that, like Prabhupada's greatest achievement in changing my life was just simply, of course, introducing the Hare Krishna mantra to me, or maybe emphasizing that was already introduced, but also following the 4 regular principles that certainly nobody else was talking about. And that, what a much more rich life one can have by applying those things. So, in our neophyte stage, we are inclined to run after these things we're conditioned to go after, and then the Bhagavad-Gita here, the purport, it describes how, for example, sex pleasure, and the tendency for man is to go after basically unlimited sense gratification. Everybody's inclined in this way in neophyte stages. So Prabhupada says human life is meant for restriction. We must restrict our the whole Vedas is all about accepting restriction. Work within certain parameters to transcend this material dimension. And even if we look at the Vedas parts to advance materially, it still ultimately is about exiting this material dimension. So Sakama Yoga, as opposed to Niskama Yoga, like Lord Chaitanya was having a dialogue with the Qazi, Muslim Qazi, and Lord Chaitanya said, "Why are you killing the cow? This is totally uncool." And he says, "Well, in your scriptures, in our scriptures, there's 2 paths, Sakama and Niskama. So Niskama is yes, better, but there's Sakama is there. So there's some enjoyment available for people if they want to take that path, but the whole purpose of that path is to eventually lead to Niskama Yoga. So we take up the process of either path, and for most people, certainly Sakama Yoga is there. For certainly most people, sense gratification, marriage life, for example, is the general way to go for most people. But what is poison for some is medicine for others, and vice versa. So some, it's like poison to get married, and others, it's medicine. So the whole purpose of all these restrictions, like don't eat too much or too little, don't sleep too much or too little, and this way one can practice yoga, is because we're so conditioned to unlimited sense gratification to now work within these parameters. And the whole purpose of the parameters is to eventually get a taste for serving the lotus feet of Krishna, right? Visaya vinivartante niraharasyudena vasovarjam rasopiyasya param dristva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense objects, but the taste for sense objects remains. But experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So Krishna consciousness is that higher taste. And one, really, I train people up on book distribution, but the real purpose of what I'm trying to do is I'm trying them to consciously connect with, to experience and consciously connect with this experience of getting this higher high. That this actually, this preaching, this taking to Krishna consciousness gives you a higher high. This is a more pleasurable experience than other things. So that's really all I'm trying to do. And when a person gets to that point, you know that they're in a sense okay. They're safe in a sense. They found the safety zone where there's no longer such a what's the right word? No longer so much just forced in a sense, or I got to just follow these rules and regulations, and it just can, if you just stay following rules and regulations for God knows how long and not get a taste, it's going to be tough. So actually capturing this higher taste, capturing the lotus feet of Krishna is, I know that those people that take to the instructions, they do experience that. And then from that point on, they always can remember that. I mean, they might go here or there or whatever, but they always know that this was better. And then their life is generally kind of guided to experiencing that over and over and over again and not giving it up in one sense or another. So, and then if we just look at, so that would be like a more matured stage in Krishna consciousness. And to get to that more mature stage, certainly it's important to study the knowledge. From studying the knowledge, we learn verses like Matras Parsas de Kontea Satosna Sugudugata Gamapaino Nityas Tam Satikshas Vabharata. Gosh, blank. One should not, oh God, I say this verse almost every week. Matras Parsas, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of summer and winter seasons. They arise from sense perception of sign of Bharta, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So, this being attracted and paying attention to this material dimension as opposed to our service is a waste of time. You know, generally speaking. I mean, certainly you might want to know that there's a pandemic going on outside, and so I can't distribute books right now. Otherwise, I'll be arrested or whatever. It's good to know these things. But to react, I guess my point is to react to this material dimension. Oh gosh, I can't wait till there's a break in the heat. When's Prasadam and all these things. Is really misuse of human energy, because human life is meant for Krishna realization. So and utilizing, instead of spending time in this way, but chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare and further our absorption in Krishna consciousness, which is the only permanent solution, that's a better use of human energy. So, in summary, we have all these rules and regulations. We have to follow these rules and regulations unless we really are beyond rules and regulations, which is a very rare state of consciousness. In that pure state, you have to be seeing Krishna always, always absorbed in Krishna consciousness, from within and without. And not too many people are probably in that state, so we don't want to kid ourselves. So those rules and regulations are there for us to follow. And if we want to get to Krishna Prema, we have to follow all these rules. We should take them seriously. And in this sense, yes, ISKCON is a society of following rules and regulations in one sense. That's not the main thing is, becoming Krishna conscious. But to be Krishna consciousness, we have to follow these rules and regulations, right? What is one of the 6 things that are favorable for our advancement in Krishna consciousness? One is acting according to regular principles, such as hearing, chanting, remembering Krishna. And one of those things that will spoil our devotional service is acting whimsically and not taking these rules and regulations seriously. So that's why showing up on time to the program. 1 minute late. Why are we 1 minute late? Let alone sleeping in. Why? We're not taking this seriously. If I can say the cause of why so many people have left in Krishna consciousness that I've seen come to the temples, come and go, I'd say the main factor is not taking, these rules and regulations seriously, or going to the morning program, going to all the programs religiously. Those people that have a very strong sadhana, you see them decade after decade staying with it. It seems, it's not a hard and fast rule, but as a general rule of thumb, that's what I've noticed. And certainly many of the big devotees have fallen away. Wonderful devotees, but considering the preaching options, super huge, and neglecting their sadhana, probably the prime reason why many of them fell away. So, point being, we have to follow these rules, right? They're there. And then, but we should remember that all these rules and regulations really follow under 2 categories. As Rupa Goswami states, in summary, we can summarize all these things up in 2 things: accepting what is favorable for Krishna's service and rejecting what is unfavorable. Everything can be summarized there. And then as one takes to this religiously, in the sense, strict with discipline, for the purpose of attaining the goal, not just for the sake of following, but for the sake of getting to Krishna Prema, making a permanent solution to the problems and miseries of life, then one does capture Krishna's lotus feet. And as one advances in this more mature stage, one is then at that point willing to accept what he, back in the past, in his before devotional life or beginning devotional life, of being attracted to certain things for his pleasure, he's willing to completely go the opposite way. And accepting what was extremely unfavorable, he's willing to take on fully if it pleases Krishna. And there's a nice story of that with Ramanujacharya, who had an amazing disciple, Koresh. And Ramanujacharya was staying with Koresh at Sri Rangam, probably, somewhere around there. And there was a king. He was an evil kind of king. and a minister who used to be a disciple of Ramanujacharya but blooped. And the king was a impersonalist, and he's like, we should spread all over the land that Shiva, worshipping Shiva is where it's at, and this impersonal program is where it's at. And so therefore, we're going to churn everybody into that. And the minister, the previous disciple of Ramanujacharya, said, well, if you're going to do that, you have to defeat Ramanujacharya. And the minister also said, if you don't defeat him, you have to kill him. Then we can do it. So the king says, yes, very good. So they summoned both Ramanujacharya and his spiritual master, whose name was I'm sorry, I'll get it in a moment. Krishna. Mahapurna. So they both were summoned. And Ramanujacharya said, yes, sure, I'll go, okay. But the Koresh, his disciple, wonderful disciple, said, hey, I know this king is very evil. It's probably going to harm you or kill you. So Koresh decided, hey, let me go in your place. So they changed clothes, and Koresh was overjoyed at this opportunity. He knew that he'd probably die or be tortured, but he was overjoyed at this opportunity. So he's taking on Krishna's service with the ultimate, if you weren't a devotee, you would avoid this at all costs. So he went to the king, and the king brought all of his pundits in to try to defeat him, and Koresh and Mahapurna easily defeated them all. Mopped them up, no problem. And devotee studies Prabhupada's books, can mop up anybody, no problem. Prabhupada's given us everything to where we can be fully situated and not get rocked off, because it's true. Truth, you become situated in the truth. Can't get shaken out of that by studying Prabhupada's books. So the king decided, okay. It turns out Ramanujacharya actually apparently did something to, his daughter, I can't remember. Some girl was possessed, and Ramanujacharya unpossessed her. So he thought, I don't want to kill him because, he's done something nice to me in the past, but let me just torture him. So they beat the heck out of both of them and tortured them, burned out their eyes, and let them go. Now on the way back to, I believe, Srirangam, where Ramanujacharya is, they're walking, guided somehow, whatever. And Mahapurna, Ramanujacharya's spiritual master, decided I'm getting old. This is quite a wear on my body. I'm splitting. I'm going back to the spiritual world, and he went back. So, but Koresh continued on and arrived to see Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya was like, man, wow, you did all this for me. But he did it blissfully. Koresh was blissed out. He was really, really blissful because he saved his guru from so much suffering, and he was totally happy. And Ramanujacharya is like, wow. So he said, look, you go see the deity and tell him to give you back your eyes. For sure, he'll give you back your eyes. So you go. So, yes, master. And he went to the deities, and the deities, I guess, were so pleased with him, they spoke to him. He says, yes, Koresh Prabhu, what can I do for you? Knowing, And he goes, that minister that blooped, that, orchestrated all this, could you please forgive him and give him pure bhakti? And Narayan, the deity, says, oh, okay. But what else would you like? And he goes, well, turns out the king, because of his offense, suffered a disease, terrible disease, and died. But still, Koresh may not have known that or whatever. He said, could you please forgive the king and give him pure bhakti? And then he's like, oh, okay, yeah, done. What else would you like? And there's nothing else. So he goes back to Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya is seeing his eyes are still blind. Saw the nature of his disciple. He can't ask anything for himself. So he said, look, you're my disciple, so your body is mine, those are my eyes. You go to the deity and you tell him to give me back my property, because I need my property to do service. So then he went back to the deity and he got his eyes back, because he said, well, it's, my guru is, it's his property, so he was okay asking in that way. So this gives an example of someone who, under normal circumstances, somebody would completely avoid, aversion, would be completely averse to getting beaten, tortured, and having his eyes burned out. But for the pleasure of the guru, he was totally blissed out to do it. He felt so enlivened. So, as we advance in our Krishna consciousness, we're naturally wanting to take on these austerities and these penances that create bodily inconveniences and mental inconveniences if it pleases Guru. One is ultimately willing to take on anything, willing to go to hell forever, as the gopis' ultimate, example. In this way, one in an element with that, as long as by remembering that everything is Krishna's service, and using everything in Krishna's service, the body and the mind, and everything is Krishna's property, and using it in his service, then by having this focus of accepting what is favorable for Krishna's happiness and rejecting that which is unfavorable for Krishna's happiness, automatically all the other rules and regulations fall into place. So I'll stop there and open up for questions. If we don't have enough questions, I have another story. Maybe I should, since we're so early. Yeah, why not? So, another story regarding Ramanujacharya, and you probably already know this one. Did anybody know the other story? No? Good. I like fresh stories. But you probably know this one, but it's fun. Ramanujacharya, again, was told by somebody to go to Mahapurna's, for him to get a mantra. So he goes, some of the story you probably don't know, hopefully. So he goes to a long walk, a whole nother world too. And Mahapurna is going, it's quite an amazing personality, but if anybody were to get this mantra, it's so pure, they'd immediately become liberated. So I can't give this out, it's too pure. So he said, no, you can't have a mantra. So he left very disappointed. And he came, and he says, maybe later, or whatever, to appease him. So he came back later. And he says, no, again. He did this 18 times, walking like from wherever to, 18. And finally, Ramanujacharya is like breaking down. He broke down. He's like completely bawling, I'm a useless nothing, and totally humble way, just completely crying like anything. And one of Mahapurna's disciples told him about this, and so he invited him, Ramanujacharya, and said, okay, I'll give you this mantra on one condition, that you don't share it with anybody, because if anybody were to get this mantra, they'd immediately become liberated and attain pure devotional service, Krishna's lotus feet, or Narayan's lotus feet, or whatever. So he gets the mantra, and that very day He's walking back to his place and he thinks, man, this mantra does all that? Well, I better summon all the people. He summons all the people in the town, says, I have this amazing jewel I'd like to give you all, just arrive at the temple tonight, and hundreds and thousands of people showed up. And he's thinking, well, I'd be disappointed in my guru, maybe I'll go to hell forever for this, but he doesn't even care. And he gives the mantra to everybody, and they all get totally blissed out. And I guess somehow he gets back to his guru. His guru found out about this, and is completely irate. Completely irate. And Ramanujacharya just simply, humbly said, well, if this mantra is so powerful, like you say, I mean, he didn't say if, he had full faith. This mantra is so powerful, so, they all become liberated, go back home to Godhead. If I have to go to hell for this, I don't mind. So that's when his guru embraced him, realized, and said, from this point on, you're my guru, and I am your disciple. So, of course, Ramanujacharya says, no, it's only by your mercy, I am your disciple. So, nice stories regarding sacrificing for Krishna's pleasure. Of course, we don't want to run with that disobeying the Guru's instruction thing too much here. It's a story. Of course, one of the rules and regulations that we should follow is, the nam-aparads. We don't want to do those, one of them being disobeying the orders of the spiritual master. So, I'll stop there. And I can talk further if need be. Any comments or questions? Yes. Do we have a microphone? Is it okay? Right there, Prabhu? On your, yeah, right on top. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. The principles to regulate attachment and aversion mentioned in this verse are specifically regarding regulated sense enjoyment. Is that right? It's not devotional service. It's not being discussed. Prabhupada discusses the devotional service in his purport.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So the attachment and aversion, and Prabhupada's emphasizing, even if you do regulated sense gratification, which is not devotional service, that you shouldn't be attached to that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I didn't explain that, and it is important. Yeah, in this verse, we're referring to, all these rules and regulations to regulate our devotional service so that we can become situated in devotional service nicely. Like, for example, it's mentioned marriage ceremony is there to regulate a person's, spiritual life. So, and it's a good point that you're mentioning here, thank you, Prabhu, that something I should have touched upon, is it's pointing out that, yes, one is given, one has that option of let's say marriage situation, and then one is given an opportunity to engage the senses in a regulated way, but then one shouldn't be attached to these regulations. The words are as follows. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them because practice of sense gratification under regulations may lead one to go astray as much as there is always a chance of an accident even on the royal roads. Although they may be carefully maintained, no one can guarantee there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very, very long time owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. Yeah. But then it goes into what I laterally focused on was but being attached to Krishna consciousness is the solution. Yes.
It's clear from here also that marriage is not for developing attachment, it's for developing detachment.
Nice point.
Sometimes that's argued that,
Yeah.
there must be a little attachment for marriage, otherwise it won't go on. But it's actually, it's for developing detachment.
Thank you very much. That's a really good point. I remember a guru explaining that we shouldn't want to get married because we can't control our mind and senses. So he says, first learn to control your mind and senses. Then if you want, you can get married. So that's a point there as well. Not that, wait, I can't practice Krishna consciousness, therefore let me let all things loose and get married. But if you can't control your mind and senses as a brahmachari, then how are you going to be able to control your mind and senses with Maya, living with Maya? So, in the sense that, living with, the object that we're, but that's, anyways, I just wanted to bring all that up. I'm not a guru, I haven't given this incredible amount of thought. Yes, Prabhu?
In the next purport, Prabhupada very clearly explains the difference between different kinds of prescribed duties, so it'll be interesting to hear that tomorrow.
Sure. I like your interest in the scripture. It's inspiring. Can't wait to be in the next class to hear more. Sure. It's like the best movie. When's the sequel going to come out? Wow. Or you see the Prelude commercial and you go, I got to see that movie. Sure. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Well, it's important to, maybe I should explain this a little bit more about the detachment program. Yeah, ultimately marriage is meant for detaching, and that's why we don't, when a person goes after a mate because it looks most pleasurable or whatever, that at the beginning, if it's nectar at the beginning but miserable at the end, right? But that which is challenging at the beginning is nectar at the end. So that's why these arranged marriages seem to be working out better than unarranged marriages. Not that you have to have an arranged marriage, but because that propensity, even like Prabhupada, he wanted to marry another person. But the thing is, if you are not so attracted to this person, then it's easy to give up that person. But if you, at age 50, wow, this prasad she makes and so forth, so wonderful, yeah, it can be tough to give it up. So the whole purpose of this, generally, the female looks attractive at a certain age, and gradually, it's like I'm no longer attracted to this. It's natural. So the whole purpose of this option is to realize that this isn't the way to become happy. So Prabhupada uses the, was it Prabhupada? I can't remember who. Well, I like one guru explained it this way. That if you're climbing up a hill and the goal is to get to the top of a mountain and you're carrying all this stuff and it's tough, and when you climb up the mountain, this person wished in his mind, God, I wish I had something to carry this, like a donkey or something. So immediately a horse shows up. It's like, wow, got a horse, fantastic. Wow, yeah, I'll just put this stuff on the horse. And then all of a sudden this guy comes out, hey, it's my horse. What are you doing? Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, that's going to cost this and that and that and this much money. And he's like, wow, that's more than I expected. All right, here you go. And then he pays him, puts all the stuff on the horse, and he goes, come on, come on, come on. And then the horse won't even move. It's like, what the heck? And all of a sudden, a fawn, or whatever you call it, a baby horse falls out. He goes, oh man, this horse is pregnant. Ah, jeez. And he says, no problem. So he goes, come on, come on, come on, come on. And then the horse wouldn't move because the little baby horse needs to get milk, and the whole mother horse is just focused on taking care of the little baby. It's like, oh man. So no problem. So then he puts the baby horse on his shoulders, which weighed more than his stuff that he was carrying, and starts walking up the hill. And then the mother horse follows behind. And somebody was watching all this and just started laughing. And the guy was kind of embarrassed and says, and the guy goes, what are you doing? I mean, you had stuff that wasn't that heavy, that's heavy, less heavy than what you're carrying now, and you spent all this money, and now you climb up the hill with all this other stuff, so much more challenging for you. This just doesn't make sense. And then he goes, well, I invested a lot of money in this horse, so I better take it with me. So this is a nice analogy of what happens with marriage life. That we think it's going to be an easier trip, more pleasurable trip, but in the long run we actually becomes more challenging. And I think it was Prabhupada or somebody said marriage is like climbing up a mountain, putting a boulder on your back and continuing to climb. So I'm not here to put down any ashram, but just if we take all the purports of Prabhupada and all the favorable and unfavorable, I think we all could agree that, if one is in saffron, is encouraged to remain in saffron unless you need that facility. Prabhupada also made the point that marriage life is there for those who do not catch the spirit of renunciation. So better to catch the spirit of renunciation and avoid that. But there's absolutely, of course, nothing wrong with being a great devotee in that ashram as well. And there's unlimited examples in our society today, and of course within the history of our parampara, of absolutely phenomenal grihasta devotees. So there's no prejudice here or anything of that nature. But I remember one devotee was traveling with me, wonderful devotee, but he had a very strong impetus to get married and have lots of kids and raise them all to become Krishna consciousness. I think he was planning on a lot of kids, maybe he still is, but I gave him, Prabhupada said at one point, yes, as far as children goes, 1, 2, 3 and no more. And I told him that Prabhupada quote. It's like it broke his heart completely. So 3 kids, that's it. Oh man. So, and even polygamy is allowed. It's just not allowed in ISKCON. The only reason why it's not allowed in ISKCON is because the public will be thinking we're kind of weird and might derail the progress of people becoming Krishna consciousness. But polygamy is allowed in the Vedic society. So as long as you can take care of everybody properly. So I'll stop there. Any more comments or questions? Yes, Boo? I think he's... Oh, did you have some? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, you were giving this example, the person carrying the load and putting everything on the load and carrying everything. So, what do you understand from this example you are giving?
Yeah. One thinks that basically a guru is giving class, wonderful guru, And somebody asked the question, well, what about relationships? And then he gave this, meaning like male, he was a female, you could tell, it was about a male girlfriend, boyfriend, or wife, husband relationship. So then he gave this analogy that we can, and then he ended it, after the analogy, he ended it with, if you have a relationship with Krishna, then that can fulfill all your needs, let's say. So anyway, and you won't be let down ever. So the analogy is that, it takes a fair amount of work to get to the top of the mountain, to get to Krishna Prema, and to think that this will help you, marriage life will help you more easily get to Krishna Prema. You have to invest so much, certain needs, interests, and concerns that woman has, and you have to fulfill those needs, interests, and concerns if you want her around. That's like the analogy of the horse who's going to help you carry the load up to the top of the mountain. But Pumsa Striya Mitni Bhavame Tam Tayor Nivapanad Griha Rila Grantamahu Atho Griha Kshetra Chalagni Suyar Janasya Mohyam Mahamamati. This attraction between male and female form the basic principle of material existence. Due to this misunderstanding, which ties the heart of both the male and the female, one becomes attached to one's body, home, property, wealth, relatives, children. Thus, life's illusions increase, and one becomes life's illusions increase, and one thinks in terms of I and mine. So now you have a horse, but the horse was pregnant, and in order for the horse to go up the mountain, you have to make sure the calf goes up the mountain. So you have to put the calf on your back. So the calf weighed more than your things that you're dealing with. So life's illusions have increased. So then that may making it more challenging to go up to get to Krishna Prema. But that there's, again, like I said earlier, some it's medicine, and probably most it's medicine. So, and some it's poison. The getting married. So we don't want to artificially say, if we're fit for marriage, then we should do that nicely. Yes. Yes, bro. Is that okay? Okay. But if one can live without the horse and the calf and all the rest, then you'll have an easier time climbing the mountain. That's all. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Premanandi.